18 months. That's how long I had been working around the clock to save Hartwell and Associates from bankruptcy. 18 months of 14-hour days, weekend strategy sessions, and crisis management that would have broken most people. 18 months of rebuilding client relationships, restructuring deals, and fighting to keep a sinking company afloat. My name is Alexandra Sterling, and I was the Senior Vice President of Client Relations at Hartwell and Associates, a mid-sized investment advisory firm that had been hemorrhaging money and losing clients for 3 years. When I was brought in to turn things around, the company was 6 months away from closing its doors permanently. I had spent those 18 months identifying potential merger partners, negotiating with creditors, and most importantly, maintaining the trust and loyalty of our remaining high-net-worth clients who represented the only real value the company had left. The merger with Blackstone Capital Management was my idea, my negotiation, and my execution. I had identified Blackstone as the perfect partner, initiated the conversations, managed the due diligence process, and navigated the complex legal and financial negotiations that finally resulted in a deal. The merger was announced on a Tuesday morning in September. Hartwell and Associates would be acquired by Blackstone Capital Management in a deal worth $47 million, saving 180 jobs and preserving client assets worth over $800 million. I was fired on Wednesday afternoon. "Alexandra, you've been absolutely essential to getting us to this point," said Robert Hartwell, the company's founder and CEO, as I sat in his office the day after the merger announcement. "But now we're entering a different phase of our corporate evolution." A different phase. Corporate speak for "we don't need you anymore." Robert, I don't understand. The merger isn't even finalized yet. There are still integration issues to manage, client relationships to maintain. During the transition, regulatory approvals to navigate. Blackstone is bringing in their own team to handle the integration. They have their own client relations specialists, their own processes. They want a clean slate. A clean slate. As if 18 months of crisis management and relationship building could be erased like a whiteboard. What about the clients? Many of them only stayed with Hartwell because of their personal relationships with me. They trusted me to guide them through this transition. "Alexandra, these clients are sophisticated investors. They understand that business transitions involve personnel changes. Blackstone's team is highly experienced and will provide excellent service." I stared at Robert, this man I had worked with for 3 years, whose company I had literally saved from bankruptcy, and realized that I was looking at someone who had already moved on to his post-merger future. "When is my last day?" "Today, actually. Blackstone wants to begin the integration process immediately, and they feel it's better to make personnel transitions quickly rather than dragging them out. Today." After 18 months of working to save his company, after successfully negotiating the deal that would make him wealthy and secure his legacy, Robert Hartwell was firing me with zero notice. What about severance? What about the commission structure we discussed for the merger? "You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay, which is standard for executive departures. As for the merger commission, that was contingent on you being with the company through the integration period. 2 weeks severance for saving a company from bankruptcy and delivering a $47 million exit strategy." Robert, with respect, I spent 18 months of my life saving this company. I identified the merger partner, negotiated the deal terms, and maintained client relationships that made this acquisition possible. I think I deserve better than 2 weeks' pay and a pat on the head. "Alexandra, I understand you're disappointed, but business is business. Blackstone has made their requirements clear, and we need to respect their wishes if we want this deal to close successfully. Business is business." The oldest excuse in the corporate playbook for treating people badly. I walked out of Robert Hartwell's office that afternoon with a cardboard box of personal belongings and a head full of anger. But more than anger, I felt a cold clarity about what I was going to do next. You see, Robert had made a fundamental miscalculation about where the real value of his company resided. He thought the value was in the brand name, the office space, the regulatory licenses, and the legal structure. He thought clients were assets that could be transferred from one company to another like pieces of furniture. But I knew better. I knew that in the investment advisory business, clients don't invest with companies. They invest with people. They invest with advisors they trust, who understand their goals, who have proven their competence through market downturns and personal crises. Over the past 18 months, I hadn't just been managing client relationships for Hartwell and Associates. I had been building personal relationships with individuals who had entrusted me with their financial futures. When their portfolios lost value during market volatility, they called me. When they needed advice about major life decisions, they asked me. When they worried about their retirement security, they trusted me to guide them. These weren't Hartwell and Associates clients. They were my clients. And Robert was about to learn the difference. I spent that evening at home, drinking wine and reviewing my contact database. Over the past 3 years at Hartwell, I had worked directly with 147 high net worth clients, managing a combined asset base of $312 million. These were individuals with investable assets ranging from $1 million to $50 million, people who had chosen to work with me personally rather than with larger firms that might offer more resources but less personal attention. I had guided these clients through market corrections, tax law changes, and major life transitions. I knew their children's names, their retirement goals, their charitable interests, and their greatest financial fears. I had earned their trust not just through professional competence, but through genuine care and attention to their individual needs. More importantly, I had portable qualifications and licenses that would allow me to practice independently. I was a certified financial planner, a chartered financial analyst, and a licensed investment advisor. I had the credentials to start my own firm and take clients with me. The question was whether I had the courage to do it. I had always been risk-averse when it came to my own career. I preferred the security of working for established firms, the comfort of steady paychecks and corporate benefits. Starting my own practice would mean giving up that security, investing my own money, and taking responsibility for every aspect of building a business. But as I sat in my living room that night, looking at the business cards and thank you notes from clients who had appreciated my work over the years, I realized that Robert Hartwell had given me the greatest gift possible, the motivation to bet on myself. The next morning, I called my attorney. Jennifer, I need to start a registered investment advisor firm. How quickly can we get the paperwork filed? Alexandra, what's going on? I thought you were in the middle of a merger at Hartwell. The merger went through. I didn't. They fired you after you negotiated the deal. They fired me because I negotiated the deal. Blackstone wanted a clean slate, and Robert was happy to give me to them. Wow, that's incredibly short-sighted of them. It's about to get more short-sighted. How quickly can we get Sterling Wealth Management up and running? Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with Jennifer to establish Sterling Wealth Management as a registered investment advisor. I rented a small but elegant office space in the financial district, hired a part-time assistant, and set up the compliance and operational infrastructure needed to manage client accounts independently. I also spent time researching industry best practices for client communications during advisor transitions. I wanted to handle this professionally and ethically, but I also wanted to make sure my former clients understood their options. The regulations were clear. I couldn't solicit clients from my former employer, but I could inform them that I had started a new practice and was available if they chose to work with me. The key was to let them make the decision rather than pressuring them to move their accounts. 2 weeks after my termination, Sterling Wealth Management was officially open for business. I sent a single email to my former clients, carefully worded to comply with all regulatory requirements. Dear client name, I wanted to personally inform you that I have left Hartwell and Associates to start my own independent investment advisory practice, Sterling Wealth Management. While I cannot solicit your business, I want you to know that I am available if you would like to continue our professional relationship. Sterling Wealth Management is a registered investment advisor focused on providing personalized wealth management services to high net worth individuals and families. Our approach emphasizes long-term planning, risk management, and the kind of personal attention that I have always believed is essential to successful investing. If you would like to learn more about Sterling Wealth Management, please feel free to contact me at the information below. If you prefer to remain with your current advisor, I completely understand and wish you continued success. Thank you for the trust you have placed in me over the years. It has been a privilege to work with you. Sincerely, Alexandra Sterling, CFP, CFA founder, Sterling Wealth Management. I sent that email on a Thursday afternoon and then waited to see what would happen. The first call came within an hour. Alexandra, this is Margaret Thompson. I just got your email, and I want to know how quickly I can move my accounts to your new firm. Margaret was a retired executive with $8 million in investable assets who had been one of my first clients at Hartwell. Over the past 3 years, I had helped her navigate a complex estate planning situation and had managed her portfolio through 2 market corrections. Margaret, I appreciate your confidence in me. Let me explain the process for transferring accounts and what services Sterling Wealth Management can provide. The second call came an hour later, then the third. By the end of the week, I had heard from 37 of my former clients, all expressing interest in moving their accounts to Sterling Wealth Management. Over the next 3 months, 68 of my 147 former clients chose to transfer their accounts to my new firm. The total asset value was $164 million, representing more than half of the client base I had managed at Hartwell. These weren't just account transfers. These were votes of confidence from sophisticated investors who could have chosen any advisor in the city but decided to follow me to a startup firm with no track record and no institutional resources. They followed me because they trusted me, because I had proven my competence and integrity over years of working together, because they valued the personal relationships we had built and the customized service I provided. Meanwhile, the integration between Hartwell and Associates and Blackstone Capital Management was not going as smoothly as Robert had anticipated. Blackstone's client relations team was highly credentialed and experienced, but they didn't know Hartwell's clients personally. They didn't understand the individual relationships, the specific concerns, the historical context that had shaped each client's investment strategy. When clients called with questions about the merger, they were connected to professional but impersonal representatives who read from scripts and followed standard procedures. When clients expressed concerns about portfolio changes, they were given generic reassurances about Blackstone's expertise and track record. The clients who remained at Hartwell after the merger found themselves feeling like account numbers rather than individuals. The personal touch that had convinced them to stay with Hartwell during its financial difficulties was gone, replaced by the efficient but impersonal service model of a large corporate firm. Within 6 months of the merger, another 23 clients had left Hartwell or Blackstone, and not all of them came to Sterling Wealth Management. Some went to other independent advisors, some went to larger firms, and some decided to manage their own investments. The client defection rate was so significant that Blackstone began questioning whether they had overpaid for Hartwell's assets. The $312 million in client assets that had made Hartwell an attractive acquisition target had shrunk to less than $180 million within a year of the merger. Robert Hartwell called me 9 months after my termination. Alexandra, I hope you're doing well. I've been following the success of Sterling Wealth Management, and I'm impressed by what you've built. Thank you, Robert. It's been a challenging but rewarding experience. I wanted to reach out because Blackstone is concerned about client retention issues. We've lost more clients than we anticipated, and they're wondering if there might be an opportunity to collaborate. What kind of collaboration? They're considering offering you a position as a senior advisor with significant autonomy and a very competitive compensation package. You would essentially run your own division within Blackstone, but with access to their resources and institutional support. I almost laughed. Robert, you fired me the day after I saved your company. You gave me 2 weeks severance and told me that business was business. Now you want me to come back and fix the client retention problems you created? Alexandra, I understand that you might have some hard feelings about how your departure was handled, but this could be a great opportunity for you to scale your practice and serve your clients with the resources of a much larger firm. My clients are perfectly happy with the resources of a smaller firm, Robert. They chose to work with me because they value personal relationships and customized service. They don't want to be account numbers at a large corporation. What would it take to convince you to consider this opportunity? I thought about this question for a moment, not because I was actually interested in returning to work for the company that had discarded me, but because I was curious about how desperate they had become. Robert, there's nothing you could offer me that would convince me to give up the independence and autonomy I've built at Sterling Wealth Management. My clients trust me because they know I'm working for them, not for corporate shareholders or institutional investors. I understand. But Alexandra, you have to realize that this client defection is hurting everyone. Some of these clients are people I've known for 20 years. It's painful to see them leave. Robert, these clients didn't leave because they wanted to hurt you. They left because you fired the person they trusted to manage their money, and you replaced me with people who didn't know them or understand their needs. We thought Blackstone's team would provide better service. You thought wrong. You assumed that clients were assets that could be transferred like real estate. You didn't understand that in this business, relationships are everything. The conversation ended without resolution, but it gave me insight into how significantly my departure had affected the merged company. Over the next year, Sterling Wealth Management continued to grow. I hired 2 additional advisors and expanded our office space to accommodate our growing client base. We developed specialized services for business owners, retirees, and multi-generational families, building on the personal relationships and customized approach that had attracted clients in the first place. Most importantly, I learned that I was capable of building something from scratch, of taking risks and betting on my own abilities. The security I had thought I needed from working at established firms was nothing compared to the security that came from owning my own business and controlling my own destiny. 2 years after my termination, Sterling Wealth Management was managing $230 million in client assets and had won several industry awards for client service and innovation. We had grown not just by attracting clients from my former employer, but by earning referrals from satisfied clients who appreciated our approach to wealth management. Hartwell and Associates, meanwhile, had essentially ceased to exist as an independent entity. The name had been retired, the office had been consolidated into Blackstone's headquarters, and most of the remaining staff had been laid off or transferred to other divisions. The merger that was supposed to save Hartwell had instead erased it entirely. Robert Hartwell had received his payout from the acquisition, but his legacy as a business builder had been destroyed. The company he had spent 30 years building was gone, remembered only as a cautionary tale about the importance of understanding what really drives value in service businesses. At the industry conference last month, I ran into Robert at a networking reception. He looked older, tired in a way that went beyond physical fatigue. Alexandra, congratulations on everything you've accomplished with Sterling Wealth Management. You've built something really impressive. Thank you, Robert. I learned a lot from my time at Hartwell, even if it didn't end the way either of us expected. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about how we handled your departure, about the assumptions we made about client loyalty and transferability. What conclusions have you reached? That I made a mistake, that I prioritized the wrong things and underestimated what really mattered to our clients. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get from Robert Hartwell, and I appreciated the honesty. Robert, I don't think you made a mistake in pursuing the merger. Hartwell needed capital and resources to survive. I think you made a mistake in assuming that clients would stay with the company rather than following the people they trusted. The irony is that if we had structured the deal differently, if we had insisted that you be part of the integration team, the client retention might have been much better. Maybe. But Robert, you made a choice about what was more important, pleasing your acquisition partner or protecting your client relationships. You chose to please Blackstone, and you got exactly what they wanted. A clean slate, and lost everything that made Hartwell valuable in the process. We talked for a few more minutes about industry trends and mutual acquaintances, but the subtext of our conversation was clear. Robert understood that his decision to fire me had been the beginning of the end for everything he had built. But here's what I want to ask you. Put yourself in my position for a moment. You've spent 18 months saving a company from bankruptcy, successfully negotiating a merger that will make the owners wealthy, and then you're fired the day after the deal is announced because the new owners want a clean slate. What would you have done in my place? Would you have accepted the severance package and looked for another job at an established firm? Would you have tried to negotiate a better departure package? Would you have taken the risk of starting your own practice? Some people have told me I was vindictive, that I should have been more understanding of the business pressures Robert was facing. They say I should have been grateful for the opportunity to work on such a significant transaction and accepted that personnel changes are part of merger processes. But here's what I keep coming back to. They made a choice about my value to the organization. They decided that my 18 months of crisis management, relationship building, and deal negotiation were worth 2 weeks of severance pay. They decided that keeping their acquisition partner happy was more important than retaining the person who had made the acquisition possible. And I made a choice about my own value. I chose to bet on the relationships I had built and the trust I had earned. I chose to start my own firm rather than looking for another job where I could be discarded just as easily. I chose to prove that my client's loyalty was to me personally, not to the company name on my business card. Do you think that was the right choice? Do you think there's ever a justification for firing someone immediately after they've saved your company? I'm genuinely curious about how other people would navigate this situation. You know what really gets to me? It's not just that Robert fired me after I saved his company. It's that he was so confident that the client relationships I had built belonged to Hartwell and Associates rather than to me personally. He thought loyalty was institutional. He discovered it was personal. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Robert had structured the deal differently, if he had insisted that I be part of the integration team rather than accepting Blackstone's demand for a clean slate. Would the merger have been more successful? Would Hartwell and Associates still exist as an independent division? Maybe. But Robert chose the path of least resistance with his acquisition partner, and he learned exactly what happens when you sacrifice the relationships that drive your business. If this story resonates with you, if it makes you think about your own professional relationships or your own capacity to build something independent when corporate loyalty isn't reciprocated, then maybe that's exactly what needed to happen. Maybe we all need to be reminded that our professional relationships have value. And that sometimes the best response to being discarded is to prove that your clients were following you, not your employer. What would you have done in my place? How would you have handled being fired immediately after saving the company you worked for? Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely curious about how other people would handle this kind of professional betrayal. Share this if it moved you. And remember that your own story of professional independence and self-respect is still being written. You have more value than you know, and sometimes the best way to prove it is to bet on yourself.